So we're going to kick this off here. Thank you everyone for joining us for our first episode, I would call it, in our recap webinar series from Microsoft Ignite. And this one is called Hot Off the Press. So Vlad and myself are actually both down in wonderful sunny Orlando for this week, and it is now Thursday, so a lot of the announcements have come out. A lot of the details we have started to really start to mature themselves, as we've seen in the last couple of days. And very specifically, we were going to dive a lot into what we're seeing here and what is kind of the culture that we've seen at Ignite, what is a little bit of the background of Ignite, and then what are really the key things we've seen in the Microsoft 365 space, and really some of the hot topics that people are talking about today. So I want to kick it off a little bit with a little bit about who we are first. I'll kick off like, who am I? So my name is Drew Madelung. I am an Office MVP for a couple of years now, and I contribute a lot to the community in the SharePoint, OneDrive, and really content services space. And I am joined here with my esteemed colleague here, Vlad, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Drew. My name is Vlad Catrinescu. I've been a SharePoint MVP for 6 years now. Even got my partial MVP for 1 year as a dual MVP, but it didn't last long. Apparently, even in tech, you can only focus on one love, so couldn't keep that dual MVP. For those of you on Twitter, you can find me at Vlad Catrinescu. I know it's super easy to spell. Drew probably still can spell it after all those years, but luckily there's only a few Vlads doing SharePoint. So hopefully if you just type in Vlad, you're going to see my face there as one of the first options.
Absolutely. And we want to make sure when we queue this up, what we're going to be talking about is really some general aspects of Microsoft Ignite and some of the key things we've seen there. But we are going to dive a lot deeper going forward. And as we go forward, we actually have some very special guests that will be joining us at some future webinars.
Yes, so a really important housekeeping. I've already had a few questions in the chat, so I'll get to that right away. Yes, this will be recorded. Yes, this will be shared afterwards. And for those of you that saw my blog, if you attend, we're actually going to get a list of people who attended after. Me and Drew did an extra swag hunt.
There's a lot of swag here.
So we're going to ship you guys some awesome Microsoft swag and really the best swag stickers from Ignite.
The best swag we could find.
The best swag we could find, yeah.
Some of them were kind of hard to get. I tried to win a Millennium Falcon the other day. I tried to get that one, the big Lego one.
Yeah.
Didn't get it.
I'm still in the run today for the Bugatti Lego. It's like $400, the big blue one.
What if one of us win the Ducati? How would that be?
I mean, can we ride it to Montreal?
I think you try to ride it back to Canada, or I'm not going to ride it to Canada. I think I can ride it back to Wisconsin, where I'm from. But I think that's great housekeeping. We will be keeping track of everyone that attends, and that will happen after all of the webinars, right? Which so please make sure if you're attending this one, attend some of the other ones, especially when we bring in Mark Caruana and Antonio. We're really going to get deeper into the weeds, have more materials for these as we kind of go through this, since this is all live today. This is live this week. A lot of the content still is flowing out. Yeah. There are sessions going on right now that are diving into some topics that will be coming into next week. So a lot of the information we're going to hit is going to be the top areas.
And we're really going to discuss about them and add those other webinars that we're going to do, demos, go deep into the tech. And if you have any questions, there is a chat function or a Q&A function. We're going to be looking at the chat. We want this one to be a lot more interactive, since it's a discussion. It's our opinions before the experts get in. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions.
Yeah, and any questions about being here, right? I think we feel like one of the reasons we wanted to do this type of event was to really share some of the information for the people that couldn't attend this event. As an example, a little bit about Microsoft Ignite. I signed up pretty late, actually, not thinking it would sell out so fast. So there are actually over 25,000 attendees that have attended Microsoft Ignite, and that numbers feels like it continues to grow. So it's a very large conference, and it can be expensive to come to, but it also is incredibly powerful. But there are times that it does sell out. So what we wanted with this is, if you have any questions about the conference, about our experiences, Vlad and myself, there have been 5 Microsoft Ignites. We both have attended all 5. We've attended tech eds before that. We've attended conferences all over.
I actually never attended a tech ed.
Ever stayed with SharePoint conference?
Yes, so it's SharePoint conference and then Ignite. I did all of them. Chicago, Atlanta, Orlando.
Yes, and we're definitely looking forward to, we're assuming there's going to be some more announcements this week about where Ignite will be next year.
Usually it's today.
We'll see.
So it should be today.
If not, yeah, by the end of the day today, sometimes right before the party. But I will say this is the fifth Microsoft Ignite. It did start in Chicago, and this is the largest event for Microsoft as far as really bringing together IT professionals. I would say a lot of IT leadership, and then it's starting to grow into really the place where Microsoft is able to talk about their applications. We have Build, we have Inspire, we have some other very targeted ones. This is going to be where, and as far as let's say surfaces or devices, this is where we're going to see applications. This is where we're going to see scale. I think if we even go back to the last 2 years, I mean, we've seen announcements like Quantum.
Yes.
Like we're seeing things that are potentially revolutionizing technology at a global scale being announced by Satya this week. And beyond that kind of exposure and kind of learning, or that kind of information we get, the ability to learn and network with the different attendees here is overwhelming. I know, Vlad, in doing this, you see so much of the working the booth and the product side that you have. What do you see from the exposure side that you get here that you can't get at other conferences?
I think what you get here, so I was laughing with some attendees, is it's almost like if you compare the expo hall to a casino in Vegas. It's huge. There's flashlights everywhere. There's so many places to go and talk to, and you forget what time it is. You can spend hours in the expo hall, and then the day goes by, and you're like, did I really just go and went around, swag hunted, attended presentations and everything? Something that Ignite has changed over the years, and I have never been to Build, but I've seen it at the SharePoint conference as well, is the presence of Microsoft at Ignite. Microsoft used to have like a little showcase thing here and there, like a few feet of space with a screen and one person, but half of the hub now is Microsoft.
And for people not attending, right, the hub actually is the expo hall. So what they've done, which I thought was a very good thing, they've started to bring together the activities that are outside of sessions into one room. So all of the community activities, all of the partners, all of the products that they're announcing, all of the experts, all of the showcases to see the devices, the store, the community involvement. I thought one of the one of the coolest things we've seen was having the service animals out there, the comfort animals. That was great. You see big old fluffy puppies out there. They have a giant.
I'm a dog person. I could have spent a whole day over there.
It was great, and they have a room where you can watch 16 different sessions at one time. Like the food is all in one spot. So they brought all of these things together into one large room, and I thought that was a great thing by bringing this all into one building, one location. Being able, if I wanted to talk to an expert, look at a product, and watch a session, we can do that all within 30 minutes. But you can bring that all together.
And to give you an idea, walking from a hub from one side to the other, I think, without talking to anybody, just walking, 10 minutes? 15 minute walk.
It's an incredibly large amount of space, and I think that really shows how the growth that we've seen from Microsoft Ignite moving forward. Or I think I should say we're going to see that moving forward. Yeah. And every year we've seen improvements. Every year we see changes, whether it's the structure of the building, whether it's the format of whether it's the format of the sessions. We are seeing they're evolving with the needs and the changes that we have. They take that feedback incredibly seriously, whether it's within a session, whether it's after a session, whether it's about the food, whether it's about the recycling programs. All of that stuff comes into play. How the transportation is giant. Yeah. All of these things come into play, and it is a very intricate system to make this giant conference work.
And there's one thing they still don't get is the Wi-Fi.
That's true. It has been rough. Now, kind of moving into the keynote, one thing that they did that was very unique this year, which I thought was awesome, was they actually had Satya moving around. They actually had him going throughout the hub and actually doing demonstrations of key technologies live. So it wasn't just he wasn't necessarily just on a stage. He was actually moving and being able, giving better awareness to actual demonstrations that you could then go do yourself. I think that was one of the coolest things. You wanted to see any of the AR stuff, you could go do that. because he's on the floor where you could do that as well.
And I think it's awesome. He was a lot closer to the people. So you're not like in a big, huge stadium like at Inspire where you have 70,000 people and you have Satya in the middle, like 50 meters from everybody. He was actually in the hub. It was limited to 3,000 people, I think they said around, if I remember correctly. And you could actually go at one of the stations. So if, let's say, you're interested in AR stuff, you could sit down in front of the AR theater and Satya would move around in front of you in that smaller space, and you could see him demo it in front of you. So it was really cool.
And some of the things that we want to talk about at the beginning are, what are some of the potentially game-changing ones that Microsoft put through? The first one I want to start with is Azure Ark. Obviously, we know from an Azure platform standpoint, it is an incredible platform. It's a great tool when we look at some of the Azure Stack investments that they've made. I wanted to highlight Azure Ark because I thought it's interesting to watch Microsoft as Microsoft grows and how it collects and works with other cloud partners. I remember thinking back, even talking about Linux and coming from our backgrounds with SharePoint, like SQL and Linux, like there's that work with GitHub, the open kind of concepts that they have is that we are better by working together. And Azure Ark is something that we see as a larger enterprise. You probably won't be just in Azure. It's kind of hard to, especially at scale, that you're going to have people, whether you're working in AWS, working in Google, but when you get to those cloud management systems, you need to have a way to structure that, to govern that. And what Azure Ark actually does is it's providing a framework, tooling to you to see all of that information, to get more information to see where your data is and what you can and can't do with that data. So I like to highlight that because I thought it was really cool how they're expanding out and not saying you have to be in Azure to do this work. You need to get work done, and you need the cloud solution to do it. We can help you manage your cloud solutions through Microsoft. And then even get into a little bit more futuristic around data management. So we know that some of the numbers that they throw out here for data it's zettabytes of data that users are generating. It's numbers that don't make sense to me, like mathematically. But when you look at something like Azure, you look at something like media. The demo that they talked about I thought was fascinating, which was, think of you watch old movies, right? Or we watch an old movie. Or if you're Warner Brothers in the example that we looked at, what if you're Disney? You're going to have media from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. That's all media, right? That's just data. And as our data grows, we're going to need to figure out ways to maintain that data. Hard drives die. Right? How many SharePoint servers how many servers have we seen that just it goes away, right? You need to replace hard disks. Storage is evolving. And what they put together was actually the ability to store data on glass. So the demonstration was actually putting the Warner Brothers Superman on a piece of glass. And the reason why that's important is because that won't boil, that won't burn, that won't fade. It's basically inscribed onto that glass, so it will hold it there for an extended period of time. And think about that for legacy, right? Think about that if you want to do long-term storage for your type of media. You starting to think outside of the box for what we're not going to do. It's not what we're going to do tomorrow. It's what we're going to do in 3 or 4 years from now. And I think it's a good follow-up to like the quantum, or like what are the futuristic things that we're looking at, whether it's AR, VR, AI, machine learning, all of the big data concepts. With big data, you need big storage.
Yes. And it's easy to generate so much storage now. I mean, if you look, you mentioned media, and I don't know how many of you have seen Toy Story 4, random out there, like a movie, but it's so realistic. And somebody was joking on the internet, like every time you blink during Toy Story 4, you miss about 2 hours of rendering because of all of the details. So that must be a few petabytes of actual stuff in the back to generate all of that. And even those companies, they're moving to the cloud. They like we started to have the edge cases, people that had limitations that they could now move to the cloud before. And Microsoft needs to innovate in order to accommodate them. And they start with things like that. But if we look at SharePoint, and we're going to talk about SharePoint after, you can see they arrive maybe a bit later, but those benefits will go down to the individual applications after as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And innovation and growth, I think, is another sign that we're going to see with Edge Chromium. So Edge Chromium was formally announced. It's been announced that it's there, which is basically a rebuild of the Edge browser. And with that, it's going to be part of using the Chromium backend. So if you're familiar with Chrome, with the way that structures, that back end is coming to Microsoft. And that actually, they give us a date this week. They have actually a brand new logo. It's a kind of a cool looking logo. I personally kind of really looking forward to it.
I have a sticker of it on my laptop already.
That's amazing. Maybe we might have an extra one of those.
I have an extra one. Yeah, I see it right there.
Little plug for someone. But I will say for the people that are working with Chrome or industries that we've seen that have really, I would say in the consulting side that I'm in, and really working in the Microsoft 365 space, I do see a lot of companies elevated their Chrome usage. And I think this is a really big sign saying like, we understand that is a powerful tool. Let's take advantage of that and bring some of the capabilities now that Microsoft can do that are going to be Microsoft specific. And I know we're going to start seeing innovation here for whether it's how is co-authoring going to work? How is security going to work? How when we're rendering stuff in SharePoint OneDrive Online, like they're going to have the power to control some of that by having that
make
Chromium
it faster maybe, or really be able to twitch it for productivity, because at the end of the day, that's what Microsoft does, is productivity.
Absolutely. And so this one, I was working with the Canary version. I've been working with the beta version now for a while. I've found it fantastic. So that's one I'm looking forward to really seeing hit the mainstream and seeing what kind of the extensions and abilities they put on top of that. Now, once you have the browser, though, the other really cool announcement was a new mobile app, brand new mobile app. So the scenario is, let's say this PowerPoint presentation, I needed to work on it with Vlad. Or let's say he's on another device. And then we had a Word document that supports it that we're like taking notes on. We have a PowerPoint that has this information. We have an Excel data that has that we have for some metrics that we're tracking. That's 3 different types of files. He would type, if we were open this up on our device, you'd have to open up Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. What the Office app is going to do is let you open up all of those different applications, all those different files in one single app. I won't have to go into other ones for those.
So I find this cool because, and I wonder if it's going to stop at Office or it's actually going to become bigger in the future. I've already had multiple clients ask me, okay, why do I have to download 25 different applications to work with Microsoft 365? Because you had 4 or 5 of them for Office. You have SharePoint, OneDrive, Delve. There's an Office 365 groups app, Stream, Yammer.
The Authenticator app. I mean, the way I've organized my phone and the way I see a lot of people do it is you have a Microsoft tab or a Microsoft page. And that's actually kind of dedicated to all of the different collection of apps. And as someone who works in that space, it's a very large collection of apps.
And it probably takes about 3 gigs, 4 gigs on a device, even probably more.
Every Office update, if you're ever curious, if you want to see some fun update numbers, go next time you have to do an update for Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, look at the size for those. They're very large applications because they do have a lot of power, right? They're very powerful for that. But a lot of the use cases, you don't need that full power. And I think the new Office mobile app, which is in preview now, so that will be coming, but that I think is going to be very nice from a mobile aspect. On the endpoint side, so we're talking kind of diving more into Microsoft 365. How are we doing modern device management? How is modern device management changing? So the majority of clients I work with, a lot of the people I'm seeing are still in config man and SCCM and staying in that for a device tooling standpoint. What a big announcement this week is that they're renamed and bringing them together. So Endpoint Manager is the name of combining Config Manager and Intune and looking at how you are going to manage your devices going forward. Because as you move into M365 and as you move fully into beyond just basic Windows 10 but more advanced device management, Intune and the policies that you can configure there and the roadmap, it's occurring there. But at that point, you're looking at not just your device, whether to bring your own laptop, bring your own phone, bring whatever, your corporate owned device. All of those are incredibly important, and the ability for new analytics by bringing this together and allowing users to be more productive by bringing them to one than having them as disparate systems. So that's one. Personally, I'm looking forward to see how that grows within the Win 10 space.
So those are the top, like high-level announcements.
Yeah, this were a lot of them that came up directly from that keynote. Now let's go into some more specific ones that are kind of in the Office 365 space.
So let me take the first one, the Microsoft Flow. This one, I really understand the why. So for those of you that haven't seen the news yet or the jokes on Twitter, Microsoft Flow has been renamed to Power Automate. And Power Apps, which used to be one word, so you had Power Apps in one word, is now Power Space Apps. So this is really because they want to complete the Power Platform. The Power Platform was always Power Apps, Power BI, Microsoft Flow. You see, I guess, from a brand perspective, the problem is Power BI, Power Apps, Flow. So they rebranded it. Now it's really the Power Platform is Power Space, and for Flow, it's Automate.
But there was a reason, right, for Automate, right? Why did they rename Power? Why did they rename from Flow to Power? I mean, is it really a rename or more of like a change in structure?
I think it's a rename, and they also didn't want to have, the workflow, because a workflow and automation in a way is bigger than just workflows. For us, for SharePoint people that are in the kind of collab space, we always did workflows, but Flow can do. I'm going to get to it, by the way. I'm still going to call it Flow probably for the next few weeks or months, but I'll get to calling it Power Automate. But Power Automate does a bit more than just workflows. And something, they actually announced a cool new feature, part of Power Automate, called UI flows. So what are UI flows? You've probably seen it if you follow tech on Twitter. Kind of the buzzwords this year was robotic process automation. For those of you that do not know what robotic process automation, and this included me a few months ago because I had no idea what it was, and I kept seeing people talking about it. I was like, okay, I got to look into this, see what's all the like fun stuff about. So robotic process automation is if you want to automate something, but basically you do not have any APIs for it because it might be a legacy application. It might be something that you cannot plug into. So robotic process automation actually does screen scraping. So it looks at the screen and you can tell it, okay, click here, or analyze the text on the screen and do action based on that. So it's really, instead of API-based workflow, when we tell it, okay, now you're going to go and change the column in SharePoint to that, you're going to tell it, okay, now you're going to go and click at this spot inside of the application. So it's really, I think, mostly based for legacy applications that a lot of huge organizations still use that simply do not have APIs because that was still like a exotic concept back then. And we're seeing more and more investment in that. And Intex recently acquired a RPA company, Fox something, I forgot the name.
And I'll jump in and say, so I work in the consulting side. I work at Protiviti, but we're a very financially heavy space, or we're actually very heavy in the audit and financial consulting side, financial services. And we see this a ton, right? We see this as you have data in legacy system, whether it's AS400 or some other system, and you have to get it out. Like if you want to start taking advantage of some of these things, you need to get it out, and there's no way to do it. I've seen the projects where people just have 10s, 20s, 30s of people to come in and just put data into Excel and get that data out into something else. And it's literally Control C and Control V. It's not in a clean process. And at scale, that's just kind of the base part of it. But when you think about that tooling and capabilities that you have from a screen scraping, from an automation standpoint, it's starting to think outside the box on that. With that tool set, what else can you do to improve the roles of some of the people in your company? And the way we like to see that is it opens those people up to do more things. So Power Automate in general, I mean, they will technically be flows, right? You still will.
Yes,
you still will.
With a small f.
Yes, you will.
So inside Power Automate, you're still going to create flows. Yes. So that hasn't changed. And it's flows with a lowercase f.
Little baby f.
Baby f. Never heard that one before. Flows with a baby f. So you're going to be able to have flows, business process flows, which are all of the kind of, I don't call it machine state, but all of the more organized, staged flows that's really used more with Dynamics than with SharePoint. And then you're going to have UI flows, which is robotic process automation. From a licensing point of view, and this is a bit funny, I went to the Power Automate booth, and I don't know if you guys have been following, they made quite a few licensing changes in the past 2 years. Last year in October, they changed stuff with the HTTP connector that everybody went crazy. This year, they completely changed their licensing. So I went to somebody there, and as a joke, I said, okay, so what's new in licensing this time? What's going to change? And I've learned that UI flows, it's not sure yet, but it looks like it's going to be a premium offering on top of the already quite expensive $40 per user per month premium license for Flow. So legacy applications, I guess, like you mentioned, you have quite a few people working there. So if you want to automate that, Microsoft can charge a bit more for it, since the cost savings, I guess, can be huge as well.
Yeah, they're drastic. So I think that I think a good thing is it's a rename, it's a rebrand, but it's also because of that, it's adding new potential. It's adding new power to the Power Platform. Charging it up? Oh.
No. We're not going to use that anymore.
We can't edit that. We're live. So the next one kind of on here is around Play My Emails. And I think what this one actually does, this is Cortana based. And this is really cool in the demonstration that we've seen of it, where you can actually be, you can come up and you can say, play my emails, and it will go through and read your emails for you. So whether you're, the perfect scenario is driving into work or driving home. I mean, that is, as someone who, instead of just stopping when you get to the stoplight and then pulling up your phone because you're at a stoplight, and then just looking for 3 seconds at the stoplight, and then someone honks behind you because you're looking at your phone, you don't have to do that anymore. And getting some of that live feedback and more, I would say, like voice assistant type work, that stuff is a big update from an email standpoint. For me personally, I think, and I know a lot of clients I talk to about that in the email side, that's hopefully going to be something that's going to be very productive. And the feedback from Microsoft is their internal work. It's been one of their favorite additions they've had.
I like the idea. Something that, and I haven't tested it yet personally, I wonder how it's going to work with multiple languages. I'm from Montreal, so English and French is every day I switch in between. So first thing, I wonder how is that going to work? Because right now, let's say the text on my phone, Samsung can read my text with Android Auto. So I have it on, it can read my text. English does a beautiful job. You should listen to it reading French, but in English. So I really wonder if it's going to be able to be smart enough to detect the language that email is written in and read it in the proper language. Also, something I'm not sure about, do I remember correctly, or Teams had a car mode at some point as well?
It did. It did.
Is it still there, or
not? I don't know.
Okay.
It is not.
I really don't want Microsoft to push this as a use it in your car mode. I see so many other use cases for it, but use it in your car mode. I don't know. You're still not, at least in Canada, I know laws are different a bit all over the place, but even clicking on a button on your phone is illegal. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Microsoft marketing it as use it in your car. I know maybe that's not what they said. That was your example. Mm-hmm. But I really don't think any company should make like a car mode or actually do advertising on stuff in the car, because it's so dangerous. You shouldn't be looking at your phone. We all do it from time to time. Let's be honest. I'm not an angel eater, but I don't think we should be marketing it as such.
We're going to change it now to while you're on a run. How about that? How about while we're exercising? We're at the gym.
That's better.
We're at the gym. That's perfect.
When's the last time you hit the gym?
On last Friday.
Okay, you're better than
Thursday. not this week. It's been a little hectic this week. It's quite busy, but I think I think it's a great conversation, right? It's a tool that's coming that you can use, and as we're going to see with a lot of these things that come out, and the next one especially we're going to talk about, there's questions around, right? There's new tech, there's new capabilities, and a lot of them, as we've seen with the way these are released, they're not always fully baked, right? The process is to have get feedback on this information. So the private preview work and the public preview actions and the feedback that they're looking for is ever evolving. So when we're talking about multilingual, I think when we're going to talk about that in SharePoint shortly, that we see those as intros to getting started. And where is it going to go from there? It's going to be based on user voice. It's going to be obviously based on this webinar. Everyone's going to listen to this and be like, oh, wow, that's actually great feedback. And bring that back up through the team. So I think that's overall a good discussion on where we're going to see Outlook go. But if you update your, they did say that was coming soon. So if you update your Outlook mobile app, definitely potentially in one of the next webinars, we might demo that. We'll see. But I do want to get to the next one because we do have an entire, the next one is around Teams a little bit. And I didn't want to, we're not going to go too deep into Teams because we do have a full Teams one coming up here. But one of the, probably the biggest announcements in the team space is that the #1 user voice request by an absolute mountain has been private channels, and private channels are live. This literally this morning I checked in my tenant and it was working.
And I think that's one of the things that divided the community the most this year, private channels. You almost have the camp private channels are good, we need them, and you have the kind of in the red corner, you have Teams, you shouldn't need private channels in Teams. It's supposed to be open work, collaboration, and all of that. So you almost have kind of the open work, open collaboration people versus the enterprise people that requested. And there's been some heated discussions on Twitter on that. So, but people have requested it. It's live. What do you think about the idea? Do you think it's needed or it breaks the collaboration concept?
When this initial stuff started coming out and I saw the use as Teams kind of started, I did have multiple, there's been obviously working in Teams every day. There are plenty of times where I've thought, oh, this would be, I need to go private. And I will say at that point I had reverted to email. I still kind of have, or created another team. Like that was kind of really your options for kind of breaking that down. But I was always, I've been trying to, I feel like the working out loud more is better. There is need for some, I feel like there's a technical need for it. What my hope is that it isn't used in excess. That I feel like there are very specific use cases, and my goal, and when I'm talking with the clients and on this, I want to make sure understand that I don't think it's the wrong thing, but don't just go out to create private channels because you think you need a private channel. Govern your channels, right? You own it. I think there's sessions here on etiquette. There's great infographics out there on etiquette and like how you should manage your content because it is kind of being more open. So the technology side, I think we'll see how kind of that continues to evolve, and I think it will be fine functionally. It's much more holistically that is that what I want? I mean, I'm thinking about working in the project space that I do, and is there value in it? And I guess I'm kind of more in a we'll see. Now that it's going to be there, I want to see how my teams work with it, how I work with other clients into it, because I think what I see is in helping roll out teams to large organizations, we talk about governance and we talk about how people want to work, and we get to see some of that at different scales. So I'm more on the fence to keep it very open, but I do understand the fact that it has to technically be there because the user voice doesn't lie. It doesn't.
Numbers don't lie.
It's true.
So I agree with you on that one. Something I'm not sure about, and something that I need to, I'll create a few blogs between now and the webinar that we have on Teams in about 2 weeks now, the management side of it. I think that Office 365 administrators that manage SharePoint, that manage Teams will find it a bit tough to adapt to how Teams private channels are from an architecture perspective. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but so every time you create a Teams private channel, you create a site collection, right? Well, you don't create a site collection. It creates a site collection in the back.
Absolutely, yes.
So if you have 10 private channels, you create 10 site collections. Those site collections are not visible in the admin center.
That's correct.
So if you're a SharePoint admin, you don't see those private channels in there. So that's another thing for management. You can see them with PowerShell. There's actually a dedicated template, if I remember correctly.
It is.
Because the site collections created by those private channels, they're just a document library. Like you click on home and it redirects it to the document library. So it's really a SharePoint site for a document library.
And when you break that down and you look at kind of the permissions inside of that, there's, again, a lot of good posts, and I know like you and I will work on some of those too, that to look at how those permission models work inside of SharePoint as well. So when you're looking at that technically, I think it's good to understand that. I will say the end user experience size is great. Me as an end user and creating a private channel
as an end user,
great. It does what I'm expecting. I can manage it the way I want to from an end user side. A key thing when you're looking at this to kind of end on this one is when you're managing permissions for your private channels, because there's a different permission for it, you need to do all of that in Teams. Like you basically make sure you don't ever need to go to SharePoint. You don't need to look at that. And I think that's fine, because as we see Teams continue to grow, and now with it wasn't announced to Ignite, but as of last week, the new files experience is coming across Teams. I think so. The need to branch out of the Teams platform is really helping.
Yes. Something else that I was a bit, and I haven't played with it in a real enterprise yet, well, because it just got launched publicly today. So I can't wait to use it in our company.
Yeah.
But by looking at the permissions in the documentation. So let's say in my team, we have a team talk about, let's say, I'll pick on marketing for today. And then me and Drew create a private channel. So we talk about a different campaign. The owner of that team, they cannot approve our private channel before it's created. They can view that a private channel got created, but they cannot actually see the content inside. So even if you're a team's owner and Drew never listens to governance, Drew creates private channels, you see that Drew created a private channel, but you cannot join to see the discussions that are happening in there. You cannot actually see if it's active. Well, that's going to be taken care of, I guess, with the user-based activity. But you cannot see the content that's shared. You cannot, through the Teams experience, see the files that are shared. You can delete the channel, but you cannot see who's inside, what's the channel about, and everything. So really cool from a user point of view. I really need to dig deeper and kind of make my own impression once to use it at Valo, how to manage them properly.
And I think, for Teams, we're going to have a whole section on Teams coming up, and we'll need to see, we'll definitely talk about that a lot more as that goes forward. Yeah. One that is kind of near and dear to me, OneNote. I am an avid OneNote user. I believe I know a lot of the people I work with are as well, and I've seen, and I think what we heard this week that kind of went under the radar to me is that OneNote 2016, the desktop client, isn't dead anymore. So that it's getting updated. It's starting next year. It's going to be back being reinstalled with the Office clients.
I don't know about you, but I'm happy about that.
I think it's great. Like,
I like the desktop version a lot more than the app.
And I went and I did the app for over 6 months. I wanted to do the Windows app. I did the Windows app for an extended period of time, and actually ended up kind of falling back into the desktop client. I don't necessarily would say lack of functionality. It might have just been familiarity and
it's
comfort.
Different.
It's comfort. I've been on OneNote for too long. I still have my OneNotes from all of my. I have SharePoint 2007, or definitely 2010. All the install documentation that I use, my checklist, like I still have all of that stored. So again, that's a great one, and we get dark mode. So it's not just back; it's back, and I think it shows that they're
back,
putting some data
and I
back.
think they'll add stuff in it.
Talking about something coming back. How about something that's almost brand new? What about the Year of Yammer?
They recreated Yammer with Fluid. And Yammer, there's people that love Yammer, there's people that hate Yammer, there's people that it depends on the day, kind of like SharePoint Designer, love-hate relationship. I think it's great to see Microsoft actually committing to Yammer. I still think a lot of clients are confused on when to use what with Teams, Yammer, and all the different way of communicating. They actually, to make that easier, they changed Yammer groups to Yammer communities. To kind
Fantastic.
Of change when people look at it, I'm creating a community or I'm creating a work group. So already that small things can help customers a lot into deciding which one to use. But we actually have a webinar on that we're going to go in depth on Yammer and Teams. But Yammer is back. Lots of cool new stuff, all in Fluid. And I think in the next, maybe at next Ignite, we're going to see other applications really not reinvented, but updated with Fluid
Absolutely.
until all of them get there.
And in this one, and kind of at the end, we will show a couple of new slides just to see. I wanted to, now that it's out, show you some of what it looks like before we dive a little bit deeper. And then the last one kind of on our bigger announcement list is Project Cortex. And this is something that is changing the way that we're kind of thinking about content services. Content services has been a leader, or content services as a concept is really about how content gets created, what's the life cycle of a piece of content, and where does it go after the fact, and how do you find knowledge and analytics and data about that. And what Project Cortex is the bringing together of different solutions in Microsoft 365 to provide knowledge and smarter information, really smarter information to get data back to you. So, and with it, it's bringing metadata back.
Yes.
Fully bringing metadata back.
Yes.
But we don't want to say that this is SharePoint and other servers are helping it. This is not like a SharePoint application. Right? This is a different way of thinking. It will be its own product SKU. It will be its own piece of basically tooling out there. And this is very, very early in the process.
They haven't released any licensing information, but I think they said it's going to be a premium offering.
Yeah, this is it's a very powerful solution, and we'll talk about this as we go. But it is very early. It's very. I mean, it was, I think, a very cool thing in our space, in the M365 space, is that this actually was discussed by Satya. Right? This was in the keynote. This is a large internal investment. This is a large product investment, and it's by middle of next year, I think, or by next spring, we'll see a lot more. But this is really just scratching the surface to say we're changing the way, or we're going to try to change the way that we're thinking about how content gets to you. Now let's jump back to Yammer a little bit here, and then we'll go back into Cortex.
I'll let you do Yammer.
So one of I want to talk about where they highlighted some of the new pieces. The main one was around the new UX, and they revitalized what that new experience looks like. And once you're inside of that new experience, they brought up how the communities are managed. And again, as Vlad said, the change from groups to communities was a large one. I think that's very clear on what they can do and can't do. And another really cool one now is actually around pinning. So that's one that has been a nice ask to be able to pin your posts back up to the top, really managing that conversation thread. And the UI and the demos that we've seen and that you'll be able to see as it starts to move it's a very clean looking UI. Now moving forward into it, the live event piece is being enhanced further. So more event-based Q&A, more filters inside of it. The concepts of leadership engagement, like bringing the CEO information back to you, bringing leadership information back to you, is being powered and built with Yammer for those communications. Now working inside of that content, being able to consider what they're considering treatments, which is what things look like, or kind of the UI of them, really a nice clean interface. You're able to do it for both questions, polls, and praises. And really the feel of photos and GIFs and videos really help with the kind of the feel of it moving forward. Now, as a quick screenshot of what the new Yammer is going to look like, you're going to see the kind of tick box in the top right, but just looking at the old community up to this one, or the old Yammer up to this one, you're going to see it looks incredibly different. And as you see just the flow of it, you'll start to see, as this goes forward, how different it really is. And this is all going to be starting to come out through the end of this year and through next year, and really evolving what Yammer is going to look and feel like. You can see that the colors on the bottom there, that's considered treatment down at the bottom. The communities list on the left, just the way they kind of structured it with the space, the color scheme of it. And at the top, you're going to see the shared search bar too. Right? They're bringing it. There was a time when the waffle was different in it. The hamburger menu was different in Yammer. Those are all coming back together. Now on the SharePoint side, I thought this was something that was really awesome to announce, which was, and I think everyone on the Microsoft side, and this was big for the people that are working in SharePoint today, is they have 100 million monthly active users of SharePoint Online.
That's
100 million SharePoint active users of SharePoint in the cloud. As someone who's done SharePoint for a very long period of time, That is a lot of people. And the reason I want to talk about this here is for there's still so much investment being made in SharePoint Online. There is so much happening there. And some of the on-premises work, you can still install SharePoint Server 2019. It's got a lot of really good stuff up there, still on 2019. But the goal and the shift is still very much cloud focused. All of the announcements that come through and that we'll look at, these are going to be all cloud specific. Now looking at, we'll dive again a lot deeper into these in our SharePoint One next. But a few I really wanted to highlight that are coming out soon that we're going to start seeing around some of the branding and in the hub side of this. I know, Vlad, something you and I talked about when we're saying, what should we talk about here? What should we wait? One of the ones that we wanted to hit here early is around hubs and what they're kind of looking at. And so what do you think about some of the changes that we're looking at, not soon, but next year around how hubs are kind of evolving?
So I think hubs are going in the right direction. Since I work for an intranet company, kind of see a lot of that. I think for right now, it might be confusing to a lot of people building an information architecture because.
And so what do you mean by that? So let's highlight the difference, right? What's coming next year is going to be associated hubs.
Right? Yeah, but let's start about what we had before.
Okay.
So we had communication sites, and instead of kind of having that site collection sub-site where like you're going to have multiple communication sites and you're going to get them together in a hub. And then now we added a home site as well. So a home site is, how does that fit in the information architecture? And now what they announced, which is what I was getting to, is associated hubs. I think people are finally starting to understand the hub idea and flatten out everything. Now with associated hub, how will it work? Something that I actually had the chance to talk with Jeff Tieper and Dan Holm yesterday on SharePoint TV. And something that I really want to highlight, and I guess Mark Cashman will talk about it more next week in the webinar with him, but those are all options. If you have an intranet today on communication sites with one hub, it's good. It's a good practice. You don't need to add home sites. You don't need to add another hub. But he wanted to offer a lot more flexibility for bigger scenarios that you have a multi-hub, like say you have 20 sites for marketing, but you have 20 sites for HR, and it doesn't make sense to have an intranet with 200 site collections. So that can allow you to manage permissions easier, manage more dedicated rollups easier, and have a central place for people to go. So I think we're still going to wait a while until we get best practices from the field on how that should work. But it's really interesting to see the new options we have and how flexible we can now be with the modern information architecture.
Which is now also going to start including, as we kind of think about growth in architecture, is around multilingual.
Yes.
So we're talking about multilingual about Outlook, but.
Yeah, multilingual is finally coming to SharePoint. Well, they kind of talked about it last year at Ignite as well, a bit. But now they said early next year we should have multilingual publishing. They haven't shared the exact details on how it will work yet. We know just a bit about the backend stuff. Mark Cashman will probably be able to share more and maybe even show it live. I'd love to see it live. We'll put in a special request if you guys put in the chat that it would be interesting. But I'd love to see it live. But it has definitely been a request. And multilingual, again, I'm from Montreal. English, French is a must in Canada, especially for governments. So this has been a requirement forever, and nobody wants to work with variations anymore.
And the last one I kind of want to touch on here, which I think kind of snuck its way in, is SharePoint Spaces public preview early next year.
Yes.
I don't have much to say on that. I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that because that's really cool. If you've ever put on the headset or just seen it live in your browser, plenty more to come. And I think a good point is the investment has not stopped there. So I'm personally quite looking forward to see how that is going to evolve. Around some of the business process pieces, where this is a lot on kind of this slide, and there's a lot more kind of coming. So this was actually from late yesterday. So this is very live. You can see kind of the screen. This was taken by me directly sitting in in the session here. The ones I want to highlight more that are available that are coming up soon is around the ability to manage some of the forms directly inside of your browser. That got a lot of cheers in the room for being able to show a hide and actually conditionally show and hide and reorder columns directly in your SharePoint list. So that, along with the ability for actually having custom forms and document libraries for Power Apps, a lot of functionality is not slowing down here for having SharePoint be the back end to help enable some of your business process moving forward. Now, jumping back into Cortex, I'm thinking about, so we looked at Yammer and SharePoint pieces, and then let's come back to the bigger project here, which is where is Cortex, what is Cortex and where is it going? So with Cortex, like this is coming from a new team. And what we have is the concept of how data is going to be ingested, what you do with that data, so actually building machine learning and machine teaching technology inside of it, and then how do we get that data out of it? The demos that there is a great website if you go to aka.ms/project Cortex. They have live demos out there for you to see this information. They have a preview that you can actually start to sign up for. Again, that is still very, very early, but the information out there and the demos I think are fantastic to click through. A key demo that we've seen and that's been one of the highlights here is uploading data directly. I can grab a file, I can go scan it. It can be let's call it an invoice. That invoice can go directly into SharePoint, and using a model that you built, you build and you use an AI builder model to build it, it will extract that metadata for you and put using it back in SharePoint, and we'll use SharePoint list data, SharePoint columns, populate data in those columns, and then that, not just that, right? It's not just extraction, it's actually building models and topics against what that data is. So you're going to have data, we're going to have models against that data, and we're going to have what's considered topics, which is going to be how does this data connect to each other? So in my sense, a perfect example for me is I work on projects all the time. How do these projects relate to each other based on the data that's being ingested inside of it? So I could have a project, let's say I'm doing an internet project. That internet project might have similar documentation to another internet project that I've done. Right? How this potentially could have us build our own automatically generate topical data for us live in the browser for us to come back and find that information in a more knowledge-centric approach. It's about finding that data and having the technology to help support it. Now, when is some of this coming? A great thing, this is all, again, very nothing soon. The soon change here is going to be that term sets are getting a lot bigger. The term store, I should say, is getting a lot bigger. That it can support over 1 million records. That's the soon one. That's the near-term one. And all of this change in content types and columns, and there's going to be a ton more coming in for this about what is modern content types going to look like. You saw a demo this morning, 4 or 5 hours ago, this morning, of the first screenshots of what the new modern managed metadata screen administration is going to look like. And all of this is coming because of Cortex, right? It's how do we start bringing data and data about data together to give someone a better visualization, understanding of the content that they have. So seeing that topical data internally. And so we probably won't see much for this in the next couple of weeks or months. This isn't like this year. Again, we're looking at next year and kind of moving into further down the line.
But there's a private preview. Yes. If you work for, I think I'll say a big organization, or if you think your organization would benefit, I'm not going to say you have to be a big organization. I'm not sure what the criteria is. I think it's more about the amount of data and things like that. You can request to join the private preview. I have actually shared the link in the chat for everybody. So you can go on resources.techcommunity. You're going to see it in the chat. I'm not going to try to spell the URL. But go in there, learn more. And if you think your organization would be a good fit for private preview, apply. And then make sure you let me and Drew know how it actually works so we can answer questions after.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's a great point. There is a preview there as well. As far as visualizations and bringing a lot of this data back into you, one of the most popular things that came out in the past year has been the SharePoint Lookbook. And this is live today. If you go to lookbook.microsoft.com, this is a collection of different templates and different information, or really kind of pre-built things for your tenants. And this is actually what they added to it this year is you can actually take those templates and add them directly back to your site, back to your tenant, right through the lookbook. So you can be showing this information to another executive, to a marketing team, and say, look at this type of intranet I could build. And then you could say, oh, you want to see it and touch it? Let me click a button and add it back into my tenant and start playing with that information to demo and highlight some of the capabilities that this has. So available today. It looks different. It looks great. And the addition of the provision engine inside of it was something that's going to make this much more useful than just a visualization tool.
Something that, for those of you that follow my blog, you know I'm big on certifications. You also, if you've ever been to my sessions, you know I'm not big on finishing on time and talking too much. We have 2 minutes left. We'll try to wrap. I have 2 slides. Okay, perfect. Learning on certifications, I'll send you links. We actually have a really nice page with resources that we're going to email everyone after. But in really short, 3 new Microsoft 365 certification that are really interesting. One of them for Teams administrators, the MS700. One for Microsoft 365 devs that didn't get any love since SharePoint 2013. So that's the MX600, and one for Power Platform Fundamentals. So I was going to say Flow. Power Automate actually did the beta, and you know how sometimes left hand doesn't speak to right hand? I did the beta. They announced it on Monday at the same time, and they kept asking me about this product called Flow, and I couldn't find it in the tenant. But I think they're probably going to fix it by the time it goes out of beta. But Power Automate, Power BI, Power Apps. And also, if any of you are at Ignite, you can get 1 free certification while at Ignite, 1 free certification 180 days after Ignite, so 6 months, as well as they announced that if you attend any Ignite the Tour, which are free events, by the way, you can get a free Microsoft certification. So, of course, you have to pass it to get it, but that can be $165 only for attending an Ignite the Tour over the other cool knowledge that you get.
And Ignite the Tour is coming around soon. So they realized that Ignite is one very large event.
Paris is next week. I know people traveling directly to Paris.
Exactly. So if you wanted to come and register, definitely come look for a city near you at the link we have in here. And this will be it's not a 5-day event. It's a smaller event. But you will be able to come in and see.
Those are 2 days events.
Yeah, smaller. Yes, not 5 days.
Yeah,
like,
not 5 days.
Like the
they're
full
2
Ignite.
days.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're going to be packed, lots of Microsoft people, and they're quite big. I attended I spoke at the one in Toronto last year. I'll speak again this year, by the way. I've not shared this with anybody yet, but I'll be speaking this year in Toronto. 5,000 people. So it's pretty big, really big events, lots of Microsoft presence, and lots of...
We know there's going to be a lot more about Cortex. We know there's going to be a lot more about a lot of the things that we're talking about here. And you can dive deeper into wherever you're located today. So kind of wrapping up, what's next? We are going to be back next week. Right? We're already coming back. We have a couple one next week and then 2 the week after that.
Yes, and really the next webinars we're going to be able to go a lot more in detail. That's why we have experts, because me and Drew, we talk a lot. We don't do a lot.
That's true.
But we're really we try to get experts from Microsoft or from the field that are knowing this. So we have Mark Cashman on November 12th. We have Caruana from the Microsoft Teams team on November 19th. And we have your colleague, Antonio Mayo from Protiviti.
He's been an MVP for many, many, many years.
He's been an MVP before I finished high school, probably. But he's been an MVP for many years. He really focuses on security and compliance, and he's the best person I know in that. So we're going to follow up. If you found a link on my blog, the other links are there. If not, we're going to make sure when we follow up with a recording, we're also going to follow up with the links to register for the next webinars. I see that, let me see, I was able to answer all of those questions. For the links in the chat, I'll email them to you guys. I don't have them right now. and I'm only 2 minutes late, which is quite good for me usually. So for those of you that have to go back to work, have meetings, you guys can go. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Absolutely.
And for making the time, and looking forward to hopefully join us again next week with our special guest.
Thank you, guys.